coalition. So the other side of it is this port of Gwadar. That has become operational this year, and they could build a pipeline up there that would go straight into China. It would cut about 25% of the cost, and it would save them about 12,000
I understand why it's happening, but looking at the attacks. Let's look at
who we have. Let's look at the attacks. You basically got 5 or 6 indications, right? First thing is, anything happening in the Indian subcontinent, the British are always the prime suspect. Always look for the old colonial power. The British were there for 200, 250 years. Anything in India, Pakistan, look to the British. What do we find? That the initial reports were that they were British citizens. They were Pakistani origin. British citizens were some of the killers. Those were early reports that then somehow disappeared. So what do we got there? Brixton Mosque, Finsbury Mosque, maybe. They have an operation up in Leeds in Yorkshire. They can recruit Pakistanis. They get them out of Her Majesty's prisons. They can brainwash them. They can send them over. That's number one. Secondly, the Israelis. Israel and India have this tremendously developed special relationship, right? Where the Indians are always buying hardware and
Webster,
equipment.
stay there. Webster, stay there. Okay. We've got to break again. This is so important. You know, I may have you just come back at the end of the show today because you've got to do an interview in here, and then after, I'm going to skip John. John, I'm going to skip this break for internet only and continue talking, but so that it has congruence. See, let's talk about another subject right now. And then we'll come back and finish up there, Webster. Well, we have a big show today. I would have you in there for 3 or 4 hours. It's just great to have you down here. I've got Paris coming up, a big rap star who's fighting the New World Order, and then we have a guest about all the GMO food and what's happening with that coming up as well. But just talking about betrayal itself, just briefly in the 2 minutes we're going to have left here, I see the Obama minions holding. Because they can't admit they've been conned. They can't admit this euphoria is false. They've been taken. Kind of like conservatives couldn't admit as Bush tripled the size of government and did all these anti-American things that he wasn't really a conservative, you know, in the George Washington vein, or you know, how do you see this unfolding? Because I lay the facts out to Democrats on the street, and I say, but he's doing everything Bush did and more, and now he'll get a new lease on life for this whole agenda. Right. And they just go, I don't care, you're just being negative. So I'm literally seeing cult-like behavior. Yeah, cult-like. I think the operative concept is the Night of the Long Knives, and the Night of the Long Knives was something like June 30th, 1934. So after about 14, 15 months of Hitler in power. Exterminate the SA.
I don't need these gutter snipes. I don't need these goons, thugs, hooligans, fervently idealistic students.
Plus, they're in revolution mode, so they know they'll.
And they want to go on, and they want to make themselves the head of the army, and they're similar to now, but they want to take over the Pentagon, take over the corporations.
And just like today, it was a predominantly homosexual cult, so that was embarrassing.
There's that, and there are a lot of morphine addicts and drug addicts running around too. Yeah. And some of these are the same people. And now with Mussolini, it's done. Sort of on the installment plan. I would look to Obama to follow the Mussolini model rather than the National Socialist
the safer, slower
model. But now, this is what Biden has already told us. Biden has told us that by 12 months into the new regime, its standing in the polls will be abysmal. In other words, they'll be down to Truman levels, 22, 23, 24%. After 1 year of Obama, you're going to find that some of these flakes are going to flake off. In other words, the left liberal Kool-Aid drinking community is going to be fragmented, and it's to some extent you can already see even on the Daily Kos in places like this there were people who were not happy with Rahm Emanuel, not happy with Gates. My God, Hillary they don't like. Volcker. I mean, Volcker is in some ways the most amazing because everybody knows what Volcker did. 22% prime rate. Your credit card rate, 30, 35%.
Okay, well, let's come back then. All of this. Here we go.
Well, I'm not the kind.
You know, we've got Jeffrey R. Smith joining us for an hour and a half after Paris joins us for about 45 minutes. Coming up in the next segment. So I'm going to bring Tarpley back at the last 30 minutes of the show because he's already going to be here recording with Genesis in another room, his Sunday show. And Webster, tell folks when that is on here on the GCN network.
It's actually World Crisis Radio, and it's available, of course, on demand, like all the shows are, but for me, it's a whole week. It's a weekly show. I tape it on Friday afternoon, and it comes on Saturday afternoon, 2 o'clock Eastern, so 1 o'clock Central.
All right, good. Folks can hear that.
On demand.
Okay, a little bit of time we have left. We're going to bring you back in on the Mumbai attacks because it's so important. They say they're going into Pakistan. They say there's going to be a crisis there.
Right.
And then on cue, it starts. And you were talking about the Israeli situation. And this could be a reverse false flag. It could be a setup, but they were wearing the large Hindu sect Zionist wristbands. They had LSD, cocaine, classic mind control. You have the intelligence chief who had just caught them months ago. The Indians, he busted
Karkare.
Yes.
They killed him.
Yes. Well, let's get into that because the evidence, there's hundreds of pieces. Only terrorism chiefs that had exposed that the Indian government was staging terror attacks, they all die within minutes.
Right. So basically, the British, we've done. The Israelis, General Mizrahi, the head of the Israeli armed forces, ground forces, goes to the disputed area of Kashmir. That's a big affront to the Muslim Pakistani side of it, right? The whole Kashmir issue is something that we should go through. It's basically India is occupying Islamic populations. The UN resolutions on Kashmir is that they're supposed to be free elections. Who's blocking the free elections is India, not Pakistan. So the Israelis are very big. You could also say, look at the ineptitude, look at the stupidity of the Indian special forces, right? They were trained by the Israelis, and now they're screwing it all up.
Well, no,
that went on for 65 hours.
They stand down and don't shoot, and then 5 of the terrorism chiefs and deputies who'd all criticized the government, they are the ones that only magically get triple tapped apiece.
Right.
Impossible.
Okay. But now, concerning this, the U.S., let's not forget the U.S. In these so-called federally administered tribal areas, in other words, the northwest frontier, the northwest area of Pakistan that's along the Afghan border, the CIA, in addition to flying these Predator drones, they also have stations. I mean, they have strong points, right? They have centers of operations among the federally administered tribal areas, and we can assume that they're busily recruiting patsies, fanatics, crazies, mercenaries, hooligans, whatever, to also become terrorists. One of the things the Pakistanis ought to do is to kick the CIA out of those federally administered tribal areas, not let them in there anymore.
Okay, in the few minutes we've got left.
Concerning now, 2 more.
Okay.
The Hindus, the RSS, okay? There's this thing, the RSS is a Hindu extremist, racist organization with strong fascist overtones.
They killed Gandhi.
Yeah, in effect. They're the descendants of the killers of Gandhi, exactly.
Because he wouldn't kill Muslims.
Right, because he was not in favor of religious war. So here we have the religious war party, and sure enough, the U.S. and the British are backing
And they're the ones tied in with Israel.
That would be, as far as I can see, the ones with this blue, pink armband that the one guy was wearing. But the RSS has been killing people all over India for years and years. You never hear about that.
And it's RSS infiltrators that keep doing false flags to the Muslims.
Look, you have a terrorist swamp, then you have the RSS provides the ideology for that. And then you have the BJP, which is the governing party, and they are now bidding fair to take over the government again in the backlash to what has just gone on.
And they give the conduit or the tunnel for the people to be brought in. But putting an end cap on this because it's about them, we're going to come back.
End cap is the RAW, R-A-W. You heard about the ISI, right?
Yes.
Everybody knows the ISI. How about the RAW, the Research and whatever they call it, the Research and Research and Analysis Wing, the Research and Analysis Wing of Indian Intelligence. They are up in Afghanistan, recruiting crazies from Afghanistan to bring them down and have them engage in terrorism against Pakistan. So the Indians have a real dirty aspect. Maybe the Israelis.
Well, it's these same groups setting off bombings in the last few months, trying to overthrow the Pakistani government, and they're admittedly Western-backed. And the Pakistani government has been saying the West is staging this as a pretext, and that was the final point, to bring pressure in on Pakistan or even overthrow them. So when you come back in a few hours, we will break down that. But in the last minute we have. Talk about that. What is the point of all this?
The point of it is to play India against Pakistan.
Bring in a radical government. Bring in a radical war government into India.
And if you play India against Pakistan, you destroy both. In other words, the Indian military would inflict grievous damage on Pakistan. But India is a country with 1 billion Hindus, But there are 200 million Muslims.
That'll cause tribal warfare around the time. So it's just like Iran, Iraq being played off against each other, both sides being funded by the U.S.
It's much bigger. It's huge.
It's not 60 million and 20
times
million.
Bigger.
It's not 60
and
million
nuclear
and 20
weapons
million.
on both sides.
It's hundreds of millions against a billion plus.
And nukes on both sides, which in the case of the Middle East, you absolutely.
And then that's the Brookings Institution and others coming out and RAND a few months ago saying we need a world war, something on that scale. Okay, Webster, thank you. We'll talk to you in a few hours back in studio.